Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at something fascinating, how a massive national crisis in China didn't just test its society, but actually hit the fast-forward button on its entire technological future. I mean, it completely rewrote the playbook for how tech should respond to a disaster.
It's a pretty wild question to ask, right? Can a global health crisis actually make a society stronger? But when you look at the story of China's tech response, you start to see this incredible pattern where innovation just explodes out of sheer necessity. So, okay, let's dive into how this all got started.
All right, so to really get a handle on the super sophisticated tech response we saw during COVID-19 in 2020, we've got to jump in the time machine. We're heading back to 2003. A different virus, SARS, was the big story, and a tiny, almost unheard of startup called Alibaba was about to collide with it in a way that, well, would change absolutely everything. So picture this. It's 2003, SARS is spreading like wildfire, and Alibaba is the small 400-person company. Then, bam, the crisis hits them directly. An employee gets the virus. The founder, Jack Ma, he makes this incredibly bold, almost crazy decision. He sends every single one of his 400 employees home to quarantine for a whole week.
And you know what? People were not happy about this. The move got slammed. State media just went after the company, basically accusing them of stirring up panic and wrecking an economy that was already on shaky ground. It was a massive, massive gamble. But here's the kicker. That gamble, it paid off. Big time. In fact, it was spectacular. See, the very thing they were getting criticized for, the quarantine, it forced this huge shift in how people behaved. Millions were stuck at home, so what did they do? They started shopping online. And just like that, Alibaba's new site, Taobao, exploded. It became a household name practically overnight. The crisis wasn't just a problem, it was the ultimate catalyst.
Okay, so let's fast forward 17 years. A new virus hits Wuhan. But this time, China's tech giants, now led by a, colossal Alibaba, they didn't even blink. They didn't have to figure things out from scratch. Why? Because they had a playbook that was literally forged in the fires of that 2003 SARS crisis.
And their response was just immediate, super decisive. Within hours, tech platforms were hitting the ground running. They slapped price controls on things like masks to stop price gouging, they protected shoppers from people trying to take advantage, and they fired up their entire logistics networks to keep critical supplies moving, even during the huge Spring Festival holiday.
And this is really important. It wasn't just about throwing money at the problem. No. The big tech companies set up these super specialized funds. Each one played to their strengths, right? So you had Alibaba handling the nuts and bolts of logistics, Tencent focused on prevention, Baidu on the public health infrastructure. The point is, they weren't just donating cash, they were deploying their actual expertise to solve very specific, real-world problems.
But it gets even more interesting, because beyond just reacting, the crisis pretty much turned into this giant, real-time, high-stakes science experiment, a laboratory for brand new technologies and even new social systems. It forced these companies to solve urgent, massive problems that honestly nobody had ever really faced on this kind of scale before.
And here's a perfect example of that innovation in action. Check this out. Alibaba's big research institute, Damo Academy, they trained an AI to spot potential COVID cases from CT scans. Now think about this. A human expert doctor, they'd need, 5 to 15 minutes to go through about 300 scans? The AI, it did the same job in 20 seconds, and it was 96% accurate. I mean, that's a game changer for doctors who are just completely swamped. But here's the thing. At first, the AI kind of struggled. It just didn't have enough data, not enough confirmed cases to really learn from. The breakthrough moment, the tipping point, came when new 15-minute rapid test kits started getting used. Suddenly, you have tens of thousands of confirmed cases popping up almost overnight. And that sudden flood of information, that was the teacher data, if you will, that the AI desperately needed to get smart fast. And it wasn't all high-tech AI stuff. Some of the most brilliant ideas were actually super simple. Take contactless delivery, just leaving a package at the door instead of a handoff. It seems so obvious now, but that one tiny change wiped out a huge risk of transmission at the most critical point, that final step in the supply chain. But maybe the most creative, the most out-of-the-box solution to come out of all of this was an idea called sharing staff. Now, I know, it sounds a little weird, right? But it was this incredibly elegant solution to two problems that seemed like polar opposites, but were actually deeply connected.
Okay, so here's how it worked, and it's just brilliant in its simplicity. You've got restaurants that are forced to shut down so their staff have nothing to do. On the other hand, you've got online grocers who are totally overwhelmed with orders. So what happens? The restaurants literally loan their idle staff to the grocers. The grocers pay their wages. And look at that, it's a perfect win-win-win. The restaurants stay afloat, the grocers get the help they desperately need, and most importantly, people keep their jobs and their paychecks.
I mean, think about it. It was such a simple yet powerful idea. It solved a bunch of critical problems all at the same time. It stopped what could have been a total tidal wave of mass layoffs and small businesses going under. It's really no surprise that one media outlet just looked at it and said, yeah, that's genius. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? What's the lasting impact of all this crazy, rapid-fire innovation? Well, it turns out that some of these solutions that were cooked up in the middle of a crisis, they're not temporary fixes. They're actually sticking around and becoming a permanent part of daily life.
I mean, the most obvious example is online grocery shopping. It just exploded. Take a look at these year-over-year growth numbers. We're talking over 200%, even over 370% for some of these platforms. That's not a temporary spike. That's a fundamental societal habit being created right before our very eyes. And as things started to slowly, carefully open back up, this one quote from a resident in Shanghai just captures the feeling perfectly. After weeks of eerie, silent streets, they said the traffic jam was so wonderful. The noise, the chaos, it was a beautiful sign that life was coming back. But it was coming back to a new normal, one that had been totally rewired by technology. So really, what this all boils down to is this. Think of it like the human body. Just like SARS created the foundation for China's massive e-commerce boom, this crisis acted as a catalyst for a whole new wave of digital infrastructure. It's like society developed an immunity, not just to the virus, but to the disruption the virus causes. The whole system got stress tested, it learned, it adapted, and it came out the other side way, way more resilient. And that really leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. These huge crises, as tragic as they are, they force us to rethink, well, everything. They slam the accelerator on change in a way that normal, quiet times just can't. So it really makes you wonder, right? If crisis is the ultimate catalyst for innovation, what kind of unforeseen changes is the next global challenge going to unlock?